Imagine a world where honesty is not a virtue, morality is a liability, and manipulation is not the dark art of the wicked, but a necessary skill for leadership. In this world, doing the right thing won't save you. It might even destroy you. Sound dystopian? Welcome to the mind of Niccolò Machiavelli. Long before terms like realpolitik and psychological warfare became common political language, Machiavelli was already laying out the brutal, unfiltered truths about power. How it's seized, how it's kept, and how it's often masked in the clothing of virtue. He didn't ask, what should a leader do? He asked, what must a leader do to survive? And often the answer wasn't pretty. Welcome to the unfolding journey, where we explore the deeper ideas that shape our world, our thinking, and ourselves. From philosophy and politics to psychology and power, we go beyond surface-level narratives to examine the real forces at work beneath. In today's episode, we dive into one of history's most misunderstood thinkers, Niccolò Machiavelli, and unpack his core belief: that manipulation is not the exception in politics, it is the rule. Let's begin. Niccolò Machiavelli was a diplomat, historian, philosopher, and writer in Renaissance Florence, a city-state torn by political upheaval, foreign invasion, and internal betrayal. He served as a senior official in the Florentine Republic during a time of intense instability. After a regime change, Machiavelli was dismissed, tortured, and exiled. It was during this exile that he wrote The Prince, his most famous and most controversial work. Published posthumously in 1532, The Prince is often seen as a handbook for tyranny, a cynical justification for ruthlessness. But that's only part of the story. More deeply, it is a brutally honest examination of political reality, how power truly works when stripped of illusions. Machiavelli didn't invent manipulation in politics. He simply dared to talk about it. To understand Machiavelli's political worldview, we must understand two key concepts he often returns to: Virtù and Fortuna. Virtù doesn't mean virtue in the moral sense. It refers to strength, cunning, adaptability, boldness, the capacity of a leader to shape circumstances. Fortuna represents luck, chance, and the chaotic forces outside human control. Machiavelli believed that political success depends on mastering Virtù to dominate Fortuna. But Fortuna is wild and feminine, he wrote, and must be beaten and forced into submission. This metaphor is telling. Power does not wait for moral purity. It demands action, manipulation, and often violence. Machiavelli's most famous, and perhaps most chilling, line is this: "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." Why? Because love is fickle, based on obligation, emotion, and hope. Fear, when properly managed, creates stability. It keeps people in line. But even more revealing is his advice on appearances. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. In other words, manipulation begins with image. A successful leader must wear the mask of morality, even if behind it lies cunning calculation. Appear generous, but be calculating. Appear merciful, but strike without hesitation when necessary. Here, Machiavelli flips classical ethics on its head. Plato, Aristotle, and Christian thinkers sought to align power with goodness. Machiavelli separates the two. In politics, perception matters more than reality. Appearance becomes a tool. Perhaps no phrase has been more associated with Machiavelli than, "The ends justify the means." While he never said this line exactly, it accurately reflects his reasoning. For Machiavelli, the survival and success of the state, or the prince, are the highest priorities. If deceit, cruelty, or manipulation are required to achieve stability or security, so be it. Consider this: a leader who fails is not remembered for being good. A leader who succeeds, regardless of methods, is remembered for bringing order. In the actions of men, and especially of princes, the end justifies the means. The Prince paraphrased: "Is this moral bankruptcy or moral realism?" That's the uncomfortable question Machiavelli forces us to confront. Machiavelli wasn't offering armchair theory. His ideas were rooted in real political observation. He praised Cesare Borgia, a ruthless but effective leader, for his calculated use of cruelty. Borgia eliminated rivals with precise, theatrical violence, then distanced himself from the act, letting his reputation as a just ruler grow. Even modern leaders have invoked Machiavellian logic. Napoleon mastered propaganda and manipulated national myths. Franklin D. Roosevelt, in the midst of the Great Depression and World War II, made secret deals and used controlled fear to push through controversial reforms. Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping use state-crafted narratives and public manipulation to maintain power with minimal open conflict. Even in democracies, politicians spin narratives, craft images, and manipulate public perception through media, framing, and rhetoric. Manipulation is not an anomaly. It's baked into the structure of power itself. This is where things get truly difficult. Should political leaders be moral? Can they afford to be? Machiavelli thought the answer was no, at least not entirely. In The Prince, he writes, "A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good." In other words, a leader who insists on purity will be eaten alive by a world that plays dirty. This doesn't mean all leaders should be monsters. Machiavelli didn't glorify cruelty for its own sake. He advised that violence should be swift, necessary, and never repeated. Manipulation should serve the stability of the state, not personal sadism. He called this prudenza, political wisdom. Know when to strike and when to appear benevolent. A surprising part of Machiavelli's thought is how often he speaks about the people. He wasn't a full elitist. He believed the people want basic things: safety, stability, and the ability to live without fear. Manipulation, in his view, is not about oppressing the masses, but about managing their passions, expectations, and illusions to maintain civic order. He even wrote in the Discourses, a lesser-known but equally important work, that republics, with proper checks and balances, can offer more lasting stability than a prince alone. So while The Prince is about how a ruler can gain and maintain power, Machiavelli's broader work shows a deeper concern for long-term civic health, even if manipulation plays a role in that goal. So why does Machiavelli still matter? Because nothing has changed. Despite our progress, democracy, and Enlightenment ideals, power still manipulates. Political campaigns are performances. News is curated. Leaders manufacture consent. Social media amplifies optics over substance. Machiavelli predicted all of this, not as a doomsayer, but as a realist. He would look at today's world and say, of course politicians manipulate. Of course image matters more than truth. Why are you surprised? Understanding Machiavelli doesn't make you cynical. It makes you aware. And awareness is the first step toward resisting manipulation, or Here lies the final challenge. Can one be both ethical and effective? Machiavelli suggests that leaders often face a trade-off. But today, we are experimenting with a new ideal, the ethical manipulator, those who understand influence but use it for the public good. Think of leaders like Nelson Mandela, who mastered symbolic gestures, media control, and even deception to broker peace. Or Barack Obama, who used rhetorical power to inspire, shape narratives, and reframe political struggles without resorting to overt cruelty. These leaders are Machiavellian not in their morality, but in their method. They know power, study its tools, and choose consciously how to wield it. That's the lesson. You can reject tyranny, but you cannot ignore manipulation. If you don't understand it, someone else will use it against you. In the end, Machiavelli teaches us not how to be evil, but how to see clearly. Power isn't pure. Politics isn't fair. Leaders aren't saints. But within that messy reality, there is a path, not of idealism, but of wisdom. If you seek to influence the world, whether in politics, leadership, or life, you must understand the mechanics of manipulation. Not to abuse, but to defend. Not to dominate, but to navigate. So next time you hear a politician speak, a headline scream, or a narrative seduce you, pause. Ask, what mask is being worn? What truth lies beneath? Because as Machiavelli knew all too well, the world is a stage, and power is the performance. If this episode gave you a new lens on politics, power, and perception, then there's so much more to explore. Subscribe to The Unfolding Journey for weekly deep dives into philosophy, human psychology, and the inner workings of society. Let's keep peeling back the layers, one idea at a time. Speech Balloon, leave a comment. Do you think manipulation is ever justified in politics? Why or why not? Brain, stay curious. Stay sharp. And until next time, understand the game before you try to change it.